Hi and welcome to the Well of Inspiration. It is a Cradle of Life production, and with me as always is Wellington. He joins me and we deliver some great content wherever you may be, whatever you may be doing, whatever you may be experiencing. The content on the Well of Inspiration is motivational content. Wellington has crafted the content to fit day-to-day situations, whether it's your personal life that may be suffering or your business. These different episodes allow you to take your success, be it personal or business-wise, professional, to the next level. Wellington, hi and welcome again.
Hey Don, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing great. How about yourself? How are things in the Seychelles?
I'm doing very well. I am doing very well. I'm not complaining at all.
Fantastic. Is it still pretty hot there, or are we in the season? You know, I've even forgotten. I've not been there a
Nah,
year, but it's like I've forgotten what the seasons are like.
you've forgotten. Now it's got its moments. So it gets hot and then it cools down. We get some passing showers, like they call them, and then
Okay.
it turns around again. So it's always like this, back and forth, back and forth.
Okay, fantastic. On this side of East Africa, it's pretty hot during the morning hours, and then by afternoon it's pretty cold. So we experience two different
All
kinds of
right,
weathers in the same day. So
in
it's
a
something we've
day.
gotten used to.
That's very interesting. That's very interesting.
Fantastic. All right, Wellington, I think for the Well of Inspiration this week, we're talking about something to do with expectations. Let the viewers know today what we're on about.
You know what? Yes, indeed, we are talking about expectations. And I think we have all been there, to that place where we fail to live up to some expectations. In many cases, it is because we have set expectations for ourselves that have proved difficult to meet. In some cases, it is because other people have set expectations on us and then we fail to meet their expectations. Both scenarios have the same effect of then turning back to us and making us question ourselves extensively. We find ourselves wondering whether we're just not good enough. We find ourselves questioning our abilities in the most critical of ways. We sometimes feel dejected and we wonder what is wrong with us. We ask ourselves this question. Sometimes we think that there's something wrong with us. If other people can do this, if other people think these expectations of me, how come I'm not able to meet these expectations? That creates a very heavy psychological burden on our minds that makes us challenge ourselves, overly criticize ourselves, and in some cases, lead ourselves into a path of self-destruction. But I have a question for you today. The question I want to ask is this: have you ever considered that maybe the expectations you are setting for yourself or the expectations other people are setting for you may not be the right expectations for you? Could it be that these people have not really understood you enough to be able to set the right expectations for you? In some cases, have you actually thought and understood yourself enough, study yourself, and know yourself enough to be able to know what expectations to set for yourself? Are you setting yourself up for success? Or maybe you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It is said that many people fail to see the silver lining in the cloud, in the dark cloud, because they are expecting gold. Yeah? We fail to see the silver lining because we are thinking that we're going to find gold there. It all comes down to our expectations. The truth is that all people are capable of achieving the expectations that are suitable for them. But sometimes when we fail to achieve the expectations, it is because the expectations themselves need to be revisited. We might be judging ourselves unfairly or allowing other people to judge us unfairly so that we then question ourselves, criticize ourselves, lose our self-esteem, lose our confidence on the basis of an expectation which was never realistic in the first place. It's all about expectations today, Don. And the question is, are you setting the right expectations for yourself, or are you living according to the right expectations for yourself to other people?
And I think this subject, Wellington, is one of those subjects that's something that will take you time to look into yourself. It allows you to go back to you as a person and actually revisit those expectations, whether the expectations from outside, expectations of yourself, and how you actually got those expectations of yourself.
100%. You see, the truth is that not all people are able to do things in the same way. There's a way that I do things that you cannot do things. And there's a way that you do things, Don, that I could never be able to do. I could never paint like some of the amazing artists I see on the island. I could never play the piano like some of the great pianists I see around me. But if you set the expectation that I'm going to do something using a standard which is not relatable to me, you're creating a problem for me. The expectation becomes a setup for disappointment. The expectation becomes a setup for pulling ourselves down when we are supposed to be working to improve ourselves.
This is a very interesting subject, Wellington, appropriate expectations. And I like the way you questioned and said, maybe the expectations set are not the right ones for you. And this could be set by yourself, set by people outside. So what are the different things that we can do to ensure that we are going with the right expectations, the expectations that are actually suitable for us?
You know what, like I said, sometimes we miss the silver lining because we are expecting gold. It's really just all about us and our expectations. In my opinion, sometimes expecting life to always turn out the way that we want may not be the wisest thing to do. Expecting other people to handle things the way that we would have otherwise wanted to handle things is not always the wisest thing, because people may not always live up to your expectations. Even you yourself may not always live up to the expectations you set for yourself. That expectation becomes a setup for a disappointment. That expectation becomes a setup for a problem for you, which I call, that's why I say that expectations can be what I call premeditated resentments. Because the minute you set an expectation and the expectation is not met, you have been preparing yourself to see yourself disappointed. And when you're disappointed, then now you have to go through a whole cycle of correcting the challenge you're faced with. It could be mentally, it can help build anxiety within you. You lose your confidence, you start having to recover a lot of ground that came about because the problem was the expectation was never appropriate for you in the beginning.
Very interesting. I love the way you say it, premeditated resentment. And this is very interesting because, like you were saying, sometimes we do set up the wrong expectations for ourselves, and other people, set up those expectations. So are we actually being true to who we are and what we know we can achieve in the direction that we need to go? Or are we doing it for the sake of pleasing somebody, pleasing those around us, and, going with their expectations and ending up failing anyways at the end of it?
Absolutely. So there are times when disappointment becomes appropriate and motivating. It pushes you forward. This happens when you fail at something that you really want to do and you're operating within your right frame, within the right expectations, everything appropriate for you. A disappointment can happen, but it will motivate you instead of setting you back. But think about the instances that we have in personal relationships, where we sometimes spend a lot of time pushing our position, our viewpoint, our ideas, trying to get the other person to see our worldview and to operate in their sphere on the basis of our worldview. What happens most of the time is that this does not work, because the other person has got their own worldview that works for them, and they may not necessarily be willing or able to actually transition and change into the worldview that works for you. We then have a clash of worldviews, a clash of opinions that leads us into building expectations towards each other that will never be met, that can never be met. We don't even know how to compromise in that case, because our position is to simply hold up our expectation, and if the person doesn't meet the standard, then we've got a problem. It becomes a never-ending cycle of criticism, redressing, forgiving each other, and then trying again, only to go through the same loop again. It's all about expectations and ensuring that these expectations are not plans we are setting ourselves for disappointment.
Wellington, I find this very interesting because it's something we all go through. Are you actually pushing expectations of your own onto your children, onto your partner? These are your expectations. And when they fail to deliver on those expectations, what is your reaction to it? I think a lot of us, especially in today's age, we expect so many things to go the way we want, our worldview, like you say. But our worldview is not necessarily the worldview of our partners, the worldview of our children. And they have their own views. And I think the one thing that is so critical for us as parents, as spouses, as friends, as siblings, is to be able to listen to that other person and see who they are, understand them, get to know who they are and what they want, and make those expectations according to who they are and what they can achieve within their own capacity.
Absolutely. I always say this, that especially when it comes to human interaction, there is never the right way and the wrong way of doing things. There's never the right way or the wrong way of viewing the world. There is one way of viewing the world and another way of viewing the world, not right or wrong. So it's up to us to recognize that another person may have a different viewpoint from what we see, and we have a different viewpoint from what they see. And these two can actually coexist as long as we learn to tolerate each other, understand each other, and accept each other for who we are.
Absolutely, Wellington. I think for the viewers who are watching, I think the next question for me also personally would be, if I'm watching this episode and I'm going through all the different things you're saying, the expectations, those unrealistic expectations, how can I as an individual break free from them?
Absolutely. So when it comes to breaking free, we all have a responsibility to take this matter upon ourselves and recognize that when we set expectations towards another person, we have to recognize that this expectation may not be met. And when it comes to expectations, sometimes expectations are set in the future. We set a futuristic expectation. I expect you to behave this way in our relationship. I expect you to do this, my son, when you go to school. I expect you to deliver at this level in the workplace. These are expectations we all set for ourselves. I think one way to break free from expectations is to recognize that life is lived moment by moment. When we live life moment by moment, we then allow ourselves to focus on the moment, on what is happening right now. Whatever is happening right now is the most important thing, and whatever is happening right now doesn't need to be benchmarked or compared against something else. You can enjoy the moment, enjoy whatever is being delivered, whatever is coming to you in that moment, as long as it is good, it is being done with a good heart, it is being done with good intentions. There's always a good thing to discover from there. There's always that silver lining to uncover, even though if you want to set yourself up for gold, there's a silver somewhere that you yourself can enjoy in that moment.
Fantastic. And I love that. Life is lived moment by moment. That is the first thing you can do to break free, as Wellington has said. I'm sure he has a few more, but we'll get back to that in just a moment. Right now, quick break, and we'll be back with a well of inspiration. Welcome back to the Well of Inspiration. Today's episode is all about appropriate expectations. And I think we've all been there. We've all failed at expectations that we ourselves have set, expectations that other people have set. But Wellington has asked you a question. Are you sure you are setting the right expectations for you? Are you listening to people who are setting the right expectations for you? Because if we're not looking at the right expectations, we are failing to do it the right way. And you personally will fail. Now, Wellington has gone on to talk about expectations are premeditated resentments. And he says, the expectation was not appropriate. The expectation for you to achieve the things that you needed to achieve was not appropriate for you. Those expectations do not meet who you are and what you are capable of doing. Now, we've looked at the different things, and Wellington has also gone into telling us how we can actually break free from these expectations. And the first thing he said is to live moment by moment. Be in that moment. Enjoy that moment. Go through those moments and allow yourself to go through that time, whether it's with a loved one, whether it's with your child, whether it's with you and your work and whatever you are trying to achieve. Be in the moment. Wellington, what else can we do to break free?
You know what? I have to highlight this, that as individuals, we all have different talents, different abilities. We all come with different tools in our tools box, right? It doesn't make us good or bad. It just makes us unique in our own ways. And we have different capabilities. Sometimes we set ourselves up for trouble when we try to live life differently from the tools that we have, when we try to sort of get in the way of what we are capable of by setting ourselves expectations that are not realistic for who we are and for the situations we're facing. It's a challenge. When we think about breaking free from these expectations, another thing that I want us to think about is we should not assume that we know why somebody is doing things the way they're doing them. One of the challenges we have as people is that we look at each other and we make assumptions about each other. We make assumptions about our actions. We make assumptions about the words that are said. We make assumptions about how we interpret certain things that are happening in somebody's life. It is never accurate because each person's experience in life is unique, it is different, and we create a conflict when we start bringing assumptions into the equation, because our assumptions will inform our expectations. And if those expectations are now based on a faulty assumption, they become faulty expectations that set us up for disappointment. Okay? So never assume that you know why somebody is doing what they're doing. Sometimes it helps to just ask.
Very true, Wellington. Absolutely. I agree with you on this one. And I think the one thing that we tend to do a lot as individuals, as people, is to assume what we think we know and what we think that that person is trying to say, or what they mean by the things that they do or the things that they say.
Oh, yeah. I mean, imagine a time when you invite somebody over for dinner and the person turns you down. It doesn't make them a bad person. You can easily assume that, or maybe they think your cooking is horrible, so they don't want to come and have dinner at your house. Or they don't like the way your sofas look and they don't want to come and spend time with you. Or you might think that, they've got better things to do. Why would they consider me to come and spend time with me? On the other hand, you could simply accept that they are unable to come this time. Maybe they will come next time. That takes away the venom that expectations can bring. Okay? The other tool that we can lean into when it comes to breaking free from expectations is to look closely at communication. Now, sometimes people feel a certain way, but they struggle to express it in the way that we would want them to express it. It becomes difficult because each one has a unique way of communication, and where our ways of communication conflict, it becomes a problem, because when I say something, you hear something else. When you say something, I hear something else, and then I form my worldview, my view of you and what you are capable of, or what you expect in your life is formed on the basis of what I am hearing you say, not exactly what you're saying. it becomes a very complicated subject. So conversation becomes very stressful when we struggle to get through to each other appropriately. We go through life sometimes dealing with these very stressful situations because communication doesn't work the way that it's supposed to work. Now, our role in this is to work out how we can communicate better or how we can learn to get through to the other person in the best way possible. This is not an easy task. People are often standing in their corners and holding fort in their corners, and they don't want to make any changes. So this becomes a very critical, very difficult element of our lives, difficult element of our communication model. Okay, so it's important to consider this aspect as well.
And I was just going to say, Wellington, when you talk about some people don't want to change, you have to be in a space or in a relationship or communicating with somebody who's willing to listen to your side and you're willing to listen to their side. Like you say, we're all built differently, but communicating the right way and understanding that I may not be able to do things like you do and you may not be able to do things like I do, but understanding each other and allowing each other to be able to express themselves and allowing for yourself to change, to sort of like be in a mold in the sense where you can actually relate and allow for that other person to express who they are.
Absolutely. You know, just going into a difficult conversation is already stressful. But imagine walking out of the conversation feeling misunderstood, feeling attacked, feeling like you did not achieve anything by going into that conversation. What that does is it then pulls you back from engaging further. The next time you've got something to communicate, you find yourself reconsidering. You find yourself thinking maybe there's no point in communicating. Okay, so we have to try and lean into communication, learn a bit more about each other and about ourselves, enough to be able to figure out the best way to relay our messages in ways that can actually be helpful to the interaction that we are having.
Fantastic content yet again from you, Wellington, and fantastic stuff here you've been putting on for the Well of Inspiration. For those who are watching today, please do not forget to comment below. If you have any questions about today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and you can also get in touch with Wellington on his website, www.wellofinspiration.com. He will get back to you. If you have any questions about today's episode, even if it doesn't necessarily have to relate to today's episode. It could be something that you might be going through that you might need help with. Wellington is the person to reach out to. Don't forget, he's got his pages on Facebook and on Instagram for the Well of Inspiration. Before we wrap up, Wellington, your final message to our audience today.
You know what? Let me just say this with regards to expectations. Our expectations are usually driven by our ego. And our ego is generally very selfish. We look at things the way we want to look at things. And what our ego does is it sometimes tends to overestimate our abilities. It tends to look at other people and put unrealistic expectations because we're looking at them and judging them by a bar that is unreasonable for them. Consider this, my friends. The next time you have to engage with somebody, try to avoid putting expectations in front. When you walk into a situation, do not assume people have these huge expectations of you. Just go in there and do what you have to do to the best of your ability. If it meets their expectations, well and good. If it doesn't, it's no longer your responsibility. Do your best, be your best, and achieve your best.
Wellington, thank you so much for this episode. Thank you for the message within this episode. And like I said earlier, for those who are watching, please do not feel shy to reach out. Any conversation you will have with Wellington will be between you and Wellington. Reach out to him. If you know somebody who needs this message, please do share it. It's right here on YouTube. Hit that share button and share it with those people who you feel may need to hear this message today. Wellington, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure. And we'll catch you same time next week.
As always, Dawn, thank you very much. Have yourself a wonderful week ahead.
And the same to you.
Thank you.